Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate, just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
If the wives get along, the guys become great friends. And that's the truth. And Bob's wife and my wife are like sisters. They really are, as friends. And Bob is from the Midwest, and I'm from New York, and I always go, hey, what do you say, sweetheart? And Bob goes, basically, I think Lincoln was a great man. I made that up. He doesn't say that. He says something dumber than that. We're in Paris. He reads the New York Times, and I find out if the Dodgers are winning. But yet, when we sit together, our values are the same. We believe in the same basic things in life, and we have great times together. For example, we're in Munich, Germany, and Bob always says, no, don't kid around. You know what I mean? This is Germany, and they lost the war, and it's not funny anything you do. I said, Bob, relax. What am I doing? Don't. And we start walking down the street, and I go, and he says, don't do that. And then the waiter comes over and says, would you care for the fish?
Yeah.
Or the salad? And I go, we would like the salad. And he goes, don't do that. If the wife...
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Apollo Wednesday, October the 1st, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and Apollo. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now, Varney and Company.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Varney and Company. The government shutdown at midnight. This shutdown is different. The Democrats are going to get the blame. Senator Schumer has been pushed into it by the left wing of his party. They want someone to stand up to Trump, but Schumer is on shaky ground. 2 Democrats and 1 independent voted to keep the government running. 2 more are reportedly wavering. And a New York Times poll shows only 27% think the Democrats should shut the government down. 65% think they should not shut it down. There is some selling on Wall Street this morning. Some of it may be the result of the shutdown, as some may be a reaction to news that E.J. Antoni will step aside at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. He was supposed to sort out the mess surrounding jobs numbers. By the way, new jobs numbers were supposed to be released Friday, but they won't appear if the government remains shut down. Plenty of red ink this morning. Dow's off 100. NASDAQ is down 121. Got it. Bitcoin, we're moving up there, 116.5. That is the quote. Little change for interest rates. We have the 10-year yielding, actually coming down a bit, 4.11%. As for the 2-year, we're right around 3.5%, 3.56 to be precise. The price of gold, $3,897 per ounce. It had moved above 3,900 briefly earlier this morning. On the show today, 6,000 people turned out for Turning Point USA's first rally in Utah since Charlie Kirk's assassination. It was the biggest crowd ever. It cemented Charlie's legacy as a free speech champion. But that hasn't stopped the left from pouring out their scorn. They're suffering from conservative derangement syndrome, close cousin of Trump derangement syndrome. It's clouding their judgment. One last point. A new poll from the New York Times shows that despite a hostile media, President Trump's approval rating has actually gone up. It is Wednesday, October the 1st today, 2025.
And that was Varney and Company, Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you, Dr. Berg.
I'm going to give you 3 tips to help you lose more weight while you're sleeping. And by the way, you don't burn fat when you're awake at all. And the last tip is going to be the most important tip. Number 3, let's go backwards. You want to do a full body workout. That intensity stimulates growth hormone, which is the main hormone while you're sleeping that helps you burn fat. Exercise to the point where you have muscle fatigue. And only do that twice a week. Number 2, make sure you have a comfortable mattress, a really good pillow. Make sure your room is slightly cooler, like about 68 degrees. Crack the window open so you get fresh air while you're sleeping. And if your dog is in your bed waking you up, put the dog somewhere else. Now for the most important tip, you want to be in bed between 9 and 9:30 and sleep until 6. This extra sleep will allow you to heal and repair, build lean muscle, which is at the heart of your metabolic rate. Hands down, the most powerful thing you can do to get the weight off. And for more tips on this, check out Dr. Berg on YouTube.
And that was Dr. Berg. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is from Fox News, and it's a little bit of Peter Hegseth's address to the generals.
War does not care if you're a man or a woman. Neither does the enemy. Nor does the weight of your rucksack, the size of an artillery round, or the body weight of a casualty on the battlefield who must be carried. This, and I want to be very clear about this is not about preventing women from serving. But when it comes to any...
Okay, so there you go. He says, let's be clear, it's not about preventing women from serving. This is a preemptive move when he says that. Why? Because he's afraid. If he just continues without it, he's afraid that somebody in the media is going to come up and say, some people say that you're just trying to keep women out of the military. Some people say that you're a misogynist, okay? So he's afraid of that. Why is he afraid of it? Because he doesn't know how to deal with it. He doesn't know how to answer that. See, it's a trick. They come off and they make an arbitrary claim, but they make it with confidence. Some people say this, some people say that. It sounds very confident, but it's still an arbitrary claim. All he has to do is simply deny it. Okay, so if somebody says to him, well, some people suggest you're misogynist, you don't deny the misogyny, you deny the some people says. So you would say, nobody says that. Then you really put it to bed. If you say, well, I'm not a misogynist, or anybody who says I'm a misogynist is wrong, or they're mixed up, it suggests that it's possible, that it's a possibility, that misogyny could be in your future, perhaps. But if you say nobody says that, everything goes away. All that, the rest of the accusation goes away. So, again, that's why it's useful to learn ways of countering what it is that you hear people say, even at work. Okay, you might go to work tomorrow and somebody might say, well, Pete Hegseth is a misogynist. And my response would be, where do you get that? Well, people say that. No, they don't. And that shuts them down. Because, again, it's an arbitrary claim. They have absolutely no proof that there's anybody who says that. So that ends it. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of motivation.
The real battleground is in your mind.
You got people betting against you. They're like, he ain't gonna do it. I bet there's a person inside of you that says, you're not gonna do this. You're gonna have to fight that. You know who my own worst enemy is? Freaking me.
This battle has no opponent. It is only you versus you.
The only motherfucking thing that beats you is you. The only thing that can stop you is you. You guys got a person inside of you, and that's the old you. Like, dude, I got a person right here that's standing back here in this mirror waiting for me to backpedal and go back to my old life. I see that son of a bitch every day. I'm going to keep outgrowing. I'm going to keep moving. Ain't no way in hell I'm going back there.
And those little things, those little menial tasks that add up, you have to execute them. And when your brain tells you that you got a great reason today not to do it, and you want to listen to your brain, because your brain doesn't want you to be a big success. Your brain just wants to keep you alive. Your brain doesn't give a fuck about your little dreams. It's going to lie to you. It's going to trick you.
And you know what it sounds like? Train smarter, not harder. No! Actually, keep training hard.
If you're totally committed, what do? I always tell people, if you want to take the island, burn the boats. Because as long as there's a way out, our brains will take it.
I gave myself no way out, and my mind realized that. It's okay. We're going to adapt and overcome now. Because he is not going to stop.
You need to win battles in order to win the war. You need to get out of bed. You need to run. You need to work out. You need to read and study and practice. And you need to do things that you don't necessarily want to do. And I know that can be hard. That's why people lose the war.
Your feelings will never cooperate with your dream. You have to reserve your feelings and do it anyway.
The daily fight is a challenge.
That's right. It's going to suck. Doesn't matter. Work harder. When something sucks, good. It's going to make me tougher. It's going to give me a good story to tell. It's going to toughen my mind. I don't negotiate with weakness. I'm not trying to convince myself. I'm not trying to negotiate with myself. I'm not debating what I should do. I am executing the plan. And I recommend that you do the same. Don't talk. Go execute.
Easy choices lead to a hard life. Hard choices lead to an easy life.
You may not want to fight that battle, but you need to. You need to know your strategic goals, and you need to know why they are important, and then you need to get up, get out of your damn bed, get off your phone, and get to work.
Hard work works. And you know what's great about our culture, y'all? The world's lazy. It's a good thing for you and me. Nobody wants to do it. Everybody will talk about it. Everybody will post about it. But nobody wants to roll up their sleeves and just go get it.
You can change you. You'd be surprised how good you'd be if you just decide to win. Be number one in your
takes a want to become a number one. Number ones never cut corners. Number ones never take breaks. Number ones don't drop the fucking ball. They are on it. They have a sense of urgency. They can care, and they're going to get everything done that they need to get done to win.
Your success is going to be predicated more than anything on your hunger and desperation level and your ability to get laser focused and eliminate the distractions in your life.
We think if we got up early for 4 days, we've earned something. You got to drop your entitled mindset.
It's not acceptable. You need to fucking work harder. You need to fucking discipline your mind better. ABD, you will always be developing. If you're not developing, you're losing. Study yourself the way the best hedge fund managers study stocks, and look how quickly you'll start changing many of your bad habits with good ones.
Work harder on you. Go invest in you. That's the best investment. Develop your skills. If you're the best doctor or lawyer or salesperson or whatever, it doesn't matter what happens to the economy. You're going to do well, and it gets better with time.
Most people work the hardest when trying to reach the top. Once they can get to that $100,000, once they get to that $1 million, they've worked as hard as they can work. The great ones work even harder after they get to the 100,000, harder after they get to the million, harder after they're famous, harder after they've got a big following, harder after they get that promotion. The great ones work even harder after they get what they want.
You already know what works. You know what to put in your body. You know how to treat your body. You know what to put in your brain. You know how you should be using the hours that you have. It's just getting yourself to actually do it.
That is how successful people become successful people. They pay the price other people aren't willing to pay. They understand what they have to do, that they're going to have to do shit that they fucking hate. But what they also understand is they're not willing to settle for anything less than what they want. If you want to dictate the life on your terms, if you want to dictate the success that you're going to create, and if you're ambitious to the point where you're not satisfied with living the status quo bullshit, you've got to learn to master the shit that everybody else thinks is irrelevant. When you start working nonstop and pushing yourself every single day, your life is going to get better. There is no question.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of meditation. that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Candice.
Ma bande, avant Kippour, parce que je pourrais pas vous parler, je vous ai mis, vous savez qu'il reste que 2 jaunes et 3 rouges seulement. Et je viens de vous mettre un orange qui n'existe pas, parce que vous avez le orange et blanc. C'est celui-là, le fameux châle de la connaissance de Mamie d'Olive. Je l'ai déjà dit, vous aurez vos mantras de prédiction avec, c'est complémentaire avec l'établissement. D'accord? 1m26 sur 1m26. Je vous montre la situation. Là, je suis carrément en Sicile. Voilà. Là, on a changé de décor. C'est-à-dire, j'étais à Abu Dhabi. Là, on est en Sicile. Alors, je vous montre cette affaire. Il n'est pas. Tac. Hop. Parce que je sais qu'il y en avait une qui avait besoin d'un orange. Ben, elle aura celui-là. Qui est sublimissime. On est d'accord? Je l'adore. Il est superbe. Et comme c'est beau, ici, on met comme vous voulez, agité ou pas. On en est là. Donc voilà. Tac. J'adore. Tac.
And that was Candice. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Dr. Berg.
Let's talk about the rules of intermittent fasting. I've done a lot of different videos on this topic, but I just wanted to condense everything in just one video. So let's take it from the top. A lot of times people want to know, what can I eat with the fast? What can I drink with the fast? Let's talk first about drinking. Water is fine. There's a thing called a dry fast. That's a whole different topic, but I do recommend drinking water. Tea is totally fine. Certain type of teas can help you fast longer and decrease hunger because the herbs in tea help support your blood sugars and your liver. Coffee is fine. I just wouldn't want to overdo it, but coffee will not knock you out of ketosis because tea, coffee, and water have basically 0 calories. So it's just the amount of calories that could bump you out of fasting. Next question is, can I take certain supplements when I'm fasting? I recommend it, especially vitamins, electrolytes, minerals, B vitamins in the form of nutritional yeast, trace minerals, omega-3 fatty acids, especially DHA. And so if you're doing cod liver oil, for example, or fish oils, the calories are going to be so small, it's going to not really interfere with your fasting. Ideally, if you get a green drink without the fiber, let's say a wheatgrass juice powder, you're getting something that is super concentrated, usually about 6 to 11 times less volume of material because it takes a lot of greens to make just a little bit of juice from that. And so usually one serving, when you add water, comes out to less than 1 gram. And so you get the boost of nutrition without messing up your fasting. What you do want to avoid is the protein powders, especially whey protein powder, and there's many other ones. I would just avoid all protein powders. Also avoid branch chain amino acids because it will turn into sugar pretty quickly. Now, as far as bone broth, there's mixed reviews. Some people do find that their ketosis actually stops for way too long, and other people, it doesn't seem to affect their ability to generate ketones. So this is mixed reviews. You might want to try it out and see if you actually can do it or not. Get a little testing unit to check yourself. Now, as far as MCT oil, which sometimes you're going to put in your coffee to make it a bulletproof coffee, you can put butter in it, you can just put coconut oil or just put MCT oil. What's going to happen is you're not going to lower your ketones because those fats will turn into ketones. But the only thing that's going to happen if you do too much of this is you're going to shift from burning your own fat to burning this fat and turning it into ketones. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially in the beginning as you're making the transition into ketosis. But at some point, if you find that your weight loss is stalled, then realize it could be this extra fat that you're consuming. But I actually do recommend it for a lot of people because it allows them to fast longer, which is actually very, very important because you want to get your body adapting. And MCT oil can give your brain straight ketones. So there's some other benefits to taking MCT oil. So it's kind of Depends on your situation. Okay, number 3, don't eat unless you're hungry. So when you start this fast, and let's say you're going to go 18 hours, and your main goal is to lose weight, and you find that you just completely have no appetite, go a little longer. Now, you don't have to do a really long fast right off the beginning, but you're on a roll. Your body is eating. It's eating its own fat. It's not starving. Might as well ride the wave and go a little bit longer. You're going to see better results. But you want to prevent the point of going too far where your body is weak and you feel dizzy. So you want to be able to differentiate some slight hunger pains. You're a little hungry, but you have a lot of energy and you have no cognitive problems. Might as well just push through that, especially if it's in the morning at 8 o'clock in the morning where you have this spike of cortisol, where your body might be releasing more sugar, but most people just push through that and then the hunger goes away. But you've gone too far if you're very weak and you're fatigued and you're dizzy and you have irritability. All right, number 4, the longer the fast, the more you have to refeed slowly. So if you're fasting for 48 hours or longer, make sure you consume just a small amount of food, maybe a little egg, a little lettuce, maybe a little bit of peanut butter, but not too much food too fast. Because what happens is that sometimes if you do a long fast, especially if you're getting to like 72 hours or even longer, and you have this huge meal, your system is not ready for it, and you can really feel kind of bloated, nauseous, and so I don't recommend it. So just do a little bit of food, wait a little bit, have a little bit more food, kind of gradually go into it. Number 5, a good indication to know of the severity of insulin resistance is how long can you go without feeling like you need to eat food. If you can fast easily over a period of time, that means that you don't have much insulin resistance left. There's not a problem. Now, there's other good indicators too, like if you were to check your blood sugars, and let's say you're fasting, your blood sugars go up. That means that you're not quite out of the woods. You have insulin resistance because your body is actually making more sugar. It's called gluconeogenesis because of certain mixed messages with insulin connecting to the liver. And so if you can't fast for a very long time, all that means is you have insulin resistance and you have to just keep working at it. You have to give it more time. Add more fat to the meal too, which will make you more satisfied and allow you to go longer. Number 6, I recommend you always do keto with intermittent fasting. I mean, think about it. You're getting all these great benefits with fasting. Why wouldn't you also want to get the benefits from keto, which is also going to keep your insulin low when you eat? If you're fasting and then you go to a high-carb diet, you're going to raise insulin, raise your blood sugars, and kind of minimize the effects of intermittent fasting. All right, number 7, I recommend you do periodic prolonged fasting. Why? Because longer fasts give you additional benefits. There are 3 really important benefits that most people get with just regular fasting. Not that long, maybe 16 hours. They'll lose weight. They'll have cognitive benefits, memory, focus, and concentration. And they have mood benefits. They go from anxiety or depression up to a higher level of emotion. They just feel better. A calm sense of well-being, which is huge. But when you do periodic prolonged fasting, you really support your brain. You grow new brain cells. When you run your body on ketones, there's much less free radical damage. There's much less waste products being generated as compared to running your body on glucose, where you have a lot more free radical damage. And so ketones are more efficient fuel. It's less stress on your body. It creates less waste and more oxygen and less CO2. So it's good brain food. Also, you're going to support your immune system. You're going to be able to fight infections better. You're going to actually increase your resistance of your cell from toxins. You'll decrease your risk from cancer because one of the purposes of your immune system is to kill cancer cells. This is a good benefit, right? And then you have the anti-aging benefits because your body is recycling old damaged tissue and definitely proteins. So you're cleaning up these cells that are dysfunctional and you're renewing them. So for repair and regeneration and anti-aging, doing a prolonged fast here and there is definitely worth it. All right, thanks for watching.
And that was Dr. Berg. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Apollo.
Chapter 23. It was darn scary. By August of 1968, Jerry Bostic was holding Glenn Lunny's old job as head of the Flight Dynamics branch, making him the leader of the trench. If Kraft sent a spacecraft to the moon in 4 months, it would be the trench that would be responsible for seeing that all the burns happened at the right times, for the right durations, with the spacecraft in the right attitudes. It would be the trench that would have to oversee navigation to and from the moon and prepare the dozens of abort contingency plans. So Bostic was among a very small number of people who were let in on the secret. Cliff Charlesworth, in whom Kraft had already confided, called Bostic on Friday evening after the Huntsville meeting and told him to go to Kraft's office the next morning. "It's about the sea mission," was all that Charlesworth would say. "I think you'll find it interesting." It was a small meeting that Saturday. Kraft, Charlesworth, Krantz, Arnie Aldrich, chief of the CSM Systems branch for the Flight Control Division, and Bostic. Kraft told them that George Low wanted the next flight to go circumlunar. Aldrich thought it sounded like a clever strategy. Bostic was shocked. "How do you think we're going to do that?" Bostic protested. "We're not ready to do that." "No, don't take that attitude," Kraft replied. He, too, had thought it was crazy when Lowe first suggested it. He just wanted Bostic to think about it until Monday morning. "I left there still thinking that, geez, I've heard of some stupid things, but that's crazy," said Bostic. He spent Sunday with a few people in MPAD, the Mission Planning and Analysis Division, who had been alerted. They decided they wouldn't have time to get everything into the Mission Control Center computers by December, but that was okay. MPAD could run the calculations offline in their own computers and then feed the data into the back rooms. It wouldn't be perfect. The trench wouldn't have all the displays in front of them that they might like, but the MPAD people could walk the hard copy from the office wing of Building 30 over to the MOCR, and they could read it off the printouts. By about noon Monday, said Bostic, I had concluded that, yeah, we can do that. Slowly, still limited to a few key people, the word spread, and the effect was electrifying. Years later, Aaron Cohen remembered as the highlight of his illustrious career the day when Lowe called him and said he wanted to pull off a coup on Apollo 8. Cohen, then working as Owen Maynard's top engineer for the CSM's systems, was directed by Lowe to see whether the CSM was ready to take on a lunar mission. Rod Lowe, running the Communications and Life Support Systems section in flight operations, was getting too far up the hierarchy to act as a flight controller anymore. His boss, Arnie Aldrich, kept threatening to move him out of the MOCR and into the spacecraft analysis room, the SPAN, a more senior position but less fun. Lowe had been resisting. After a meeting in Kraft's office where Lowe first heard that they might be going circumlunar on the December mission, Lowe and Aldrich walked back to their offices in Building 30. On the way, Lowe made up his mind. Just let me be your lead ecom on this flight, he said to Aldrich, and he would never argue with him again about going into the SPAN. Lowe would go there for the rest of his career, he said, if only he could be in the MOCR for this one. 1. Sam Phillips had gone back to Washington after the Huntsville meeting to tell Tom Paine, the acting administrator in Webb's absence, about the idea. Sam, Paine said, we've been arguing whether we could put a man on the Saturn V. The last time it had pogo troubles. The SLA came apart, and 3 engines shut down. Now you want to up the ante. Do you really want to do this, Sam? Yes, sir, Phillips said. Paine instinctively liked the idea, but it seemed too good to be true. Yet Phillips's judgment was always solid, and if he was this enthusiastic, then C' must be feasible. We'll have a hell of a time selling it to Miller and Webb, Paine said. When Sam Phillips finally got hold of him by phone on Tuesday, August 13th, George Miller was skeptical and cool. The risks were obvious. The technological gains of a lunar flight over an Earth orbit flight were not immediately apparent. Miller would think about it. It wasn't until Thursday, August 15th, that they reached Webb on a conference call to the U.S. Embassy in Vienna. Miller had not yet mentioned C. to him. Sam and I sat down in 2 offices and managed to put over the idea to Jim, Payne recalled. He was horrified. He was pretty crisp and clear in his disbelief, Phillips agreed. If a person's shock could be transmitted over the telephone, I'd probably have been shot in the head. For Jim Webb, Lowe's brainchild was more than he wanted to face. By the summer of 1968, Webb had been administrator of NASA for more than 7 years, negotiating a path for NASA in the midst of Johnson's growing preoccupation with Vietnam and increasing congressional hostility toward Apollo. Webb had borne months of criticism after the fire. Now he was being asked to approve a mission that jumped the schedule everyone had agreed to and that, if it were to fail, could fail in a particularly ghastly way, with astronauts marooned in lunar orbit at Christmas time. Furthermore, Webb knew he was going to be out of his job on January 20th, 1969. Neither Humphrey nor Nixon would let him stay on through the first moon landing. All this led Webb to 2 conclusions, mixing loyalty and political canniness. If something did go wrong, he wanted to be able to defend NASA and his engineers aggressively. If he were administrator, anything he said would sound self-serving. Also, there was nothing to gain by staying. If C' were a success, it would not add much to his experience at NASA. If it were a failure, he would not only be the obvious target of recriminations, he would have to respond without the resources of the administrator's office to support him. Staying with NASA as of the fall of 1968 was for Jim Webb a high-risk, low-gain proposition. On September 16th, Webb went over to the White House and renewed a suggestion he had made before, that perhaps it was time for him to retire. LBJ took him up on it, suggesting that Webb resign immediately. Webb was surprised that Johnson wanted to do it that very day, but he was glad to be released. James E. Webb, NASA's second administrator, its longest tenured, and in the minds of many, its finest, left NASA on October 7, 1968, 4 days before the first men flew in an Apollo spacecraft. He was replaced by Tom Paine. Rocco Petrone was sitting with Sam Phillips and George Lowe in the firing room, watching a dry run with the Apollo 7 astronauts, when the news of Webb's resignation came over the wire. It had been a rough day, Petrone remembered. The dry run had encountered the usual series of problems, unpleasantly reminiscent of another dry run with the crew of AS-204 19 months earlier. Everybody was edgy. Then Jack King, the Cape's public information officer, came over to Petrone's console and told them that Jim Webb had just announced his retirement. It came as a surprise to all of them. This was, they recognized, the passing of an era. Still, there was another side to it. George Lowe turned to Sam Phillips and said, "This makes C' possible." It had already been announced that a new mission was going to be inserted between Schirra's flight and Jim McDivitt's test of the LEM. Phillips had given a press conference in late August revealing that the new Apollo 8 might be more than just a low Earth orbit flight. NASA was preparing a flexible mission, he said. Perhaps the spacecraft would have a high Earth orbit, with an apogee several thousand miles out. Conceivably, Apollo 8 could involve a circumlunar flight, but Phillips buried that possibility under so much talk about the flexible mission that only Tom O'Toole of the Washington Post put the circumlunar option in his lead. Most of the others came away from Phillips's briefing thinking that a lunar mission was such a remote possibility that they didn't even mention it. By the time that Apollo 7 was launched on a Saturn 1B with Wally Schirra, Walt Cunningham, and Don Isley on October 11, 1968, the press had discovered that the possibilities of a circumlunar flight were greater than they had realized. Then Apollo 7 turned out to be close to a perfect mission, discounting the head colds that plagued all 3 astronauts and some wrangling between the crew and ground. The 11-day flight gave the controllers a chance to wring out all of the Apollo spacecraft's environmental and control systems. The S-4B that would have to push Apollo 8's spacecraft into a translunar orbit worked perfectly. So did the SPS engine on the service module that would slow the spacecraft into lunar orbit, and later speed it out of lunar orbit and back toward the Earth. After Schirra's crew landed on October 22nd, the speculation about a lunar flight for Apollo 8 was fully in the open and sometimes being treated as certainty. Within NASA, however, a final decision had yet to be made. Miller had continued to play a skeptic's role throughout the fall, unconvinced that the gains were worth the risk. But the people at Houston kept coming up with counters to his objections. On October 28th and 29th, a critical review was held. After 2 long days of briefings, Miller said tersely that he had concluded there is no technical reason not to fly Apollo 8 as a lunar orbit flight. But still, he was dissatisfied. On November 4th, Miller sent a letter to Bob Gilruth urging one long last look. There are grave risks to the program as a whole, not just to the Apollo 8 mission, he wrote. He was satisfied that the risks from a purely technical aspect are probably reasonable and acceptable, and he recognized that the greatest single advantage of flying Apollo 8 to the moon was the way it had galvanized people. Yet, Miller pointed out, you and I know that if failure comes, the reaction will be that anyone should have known better than to undertake such a trip at this point in time. Miller got the additional long last look he wanted, but by this time the psychological momentum had built. On November 7th, the C-Prime Crew Safety Review Board came in with its favorable recommendation. On November 10th, the Apollo executives were briefed by Phillips, Lowe, and other senior NASA managers on the benefits and risks of Apollo 8, and unanimously went on record in favor of a lunar flight, with the McDonnell Douglas representative recommending that it be circumlunar instead of lunar orbit. On November 11th, there was a NASA management meeting to go over everything one more time, then a smaller meeting of Payne, Miller, Phillips, and the center directors, then a third meeting of just Payne, Homer Newell, the associate administrator, and Miller. The next morning, Tuesday, November 12, 1968, Acting Administrator Payne appeared at a press conference and announced that Apollo 8 would be a lunar orbit mission.
And that was Chapter 23 and Chapter 23, Part 1 of Apollo by Charles Murray and Catherine Bly Cox. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that skepticism is doubtful.